5 mindsets all high performers have, and all people that have started or are on their meaningful revolutions also have, right? And, you know, again, these are, it's kind of like the groundwork for really focusing on the things that mean stuff to you, that you find engaging, exciting, that you know, get into those flow states for. But if you don't have the right mindsets, that's not going to happen. You're going to wander, you're going to be distracted, you're going to be thrown off course super easy. So that's why these 5 mindsets are super important. So welcome to the Meaningful Revolution podcast, where we talk about people's passions and hope to inspire you to your own. We also answer the question, what if you could just add 1% more meaning to your life every day for the next year? So join us on this Meaningful Revolution. I'm your host, Sean Butner, certified high performance coach, and we have a really great episode for you today, so let's get into it. Podcast update. So I have done like 3.5 seasons of the podcast, mostly interviews, a couple of these one-off episodes like that I'll drop later this week. So super stoked about that. But ultimately, like, I wanted to reset, because I think I had this intention going into the podcast that it was going to be about interviewing people about their passions and what they nerd out about, and so that passion would be contagious. And I still believe in that. I still think that's part of it, but I also think there's this other part of the conversation that I've noticed, and it's a connection between my coaching clients, it's a connection between people I've interviewed. But when we talk about the meaningful revolution, you know, I've been trying to find the right words to articulate that, and I knew that I would be kind of evolving it as we go. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we've been trying to accomplish on the Meaningful Revolution podcast, and then why is a meaningful revolution for yourself really important. So the first thing is what is the meaningful revolution? It's, you know, interviewing people about their passions so that it's contagious and you get pumped up about the things that you really care about. It's, you know, we had this idea that if you added just 1% more of meaning in your life, you know, things that advanced your big goals, things that fueled your ambitions, things that fueled your abundance so you could provide more for your family or deliver a greater legacy and really help the people that you serve more, that over the course of a year you would lead an extraordinary life. And I think that is still one of the core tenets of this podcast also. But I also think it's had this idea of, you know, it can sound like with just those points that if you're listening, maybe you're like, I live a fulfilling life. Like, why would I need to listen to the podcast, you know? Or if you're so far removed from it, it could seem like such a big hurdle. So on the extreme ends. And to that, like, I assume most of the people that join me live on you know, my weekly newsletter, I assume that people that listen to my podcast are people that are already successful, have a huge amount of success in their life, are at some levels fulfilled, whether that's with work, whether that's with, you know, family and relationships or kids, whether that's with, you know, fulfilled by doing physical labor or health stuff, whatever is your bag. Like, it's such an open thing on what people find meaningful. But at the end of the day, like, you probably already have some success with that. You probably already are connected to that in some way, shape, or form. But isn't it true, though, that sometimes if we're not giving a lot of intention to the things that we find meaningful, that they don't happen enough, right? So maybe you have an awesome job and you're super focused on that and you're neglecting your kids, right? And that is causing you to have weird things happen at work where you have to make choices between, do I grind all night or do I go and kiss my kids goodnight, you know? So there's a ratio, there's a mix of the things that are meaningful to you in your life and a different priority of those, right? So I think that's one conversation to have, is like, what is most important to me? What do I value the most? What am I going to focus on? And what's right for me right now, right? Because what's right for you right now might change. Or what was right for you 3 months ago might be different. 3 years ago is definitely different. So how are you constantly evaluating that How are you constantly reflecting on that so that you're continuing to work on the things that matter the most to you? And I think that's a really important conversation to have in the context of this podcast, right? On the other side, too, it's so many times, too, you get stuck with doing a lot of busy work or things that you think you need to do, and you don't ask for help, maybe, or you just have to do it all yourself and you feel overwhelmed. And so there's this, like, meaningful task, meaningful things to busy work ratio, right? And I think so many people, and myself included, could probably stand to improve that ratio. And what do I mean by that? I mean that for every hour of busy work, maybe you're doing 1 hour of meaningful things, which is pretty good, right? But if you're doing, for every hour of busy work, 4 hours of things that drove your life forward, provided more for your family again, or, you know, did the things that really fulfilled you, you'd have a different quality of life. You'd have a different set of feelings about yourself, about your relationships, and the world around you that would be a little bit more positive, in my belief. And I've seen this happen a lot with my coaching clients, not articulated that particular way, but as people started shifting into getting rid of the old and taking on new things that they loved, things really changed for them. So I think that ratio is a new component to this conversation on starting a meaningful revolution. So why is it important for everyone to have a personal meaning revolution in their life? And I'm glad that you asked that. So really, I think it's two things, right? I think that there is this thing happening societally, globally, where there's a lot of just negative energy out there, right? Call it the internet, call it TV news, call it just being in your communities. But I've noticed, and I know some of my peers have noticed, that so many people are just so much more miserable and so cranky or so focused on negative things that it shows up in bad behavior out in public, or treating relationships poorly. And I think the way to change that is to shift the focus to, like, away from drama, away from divisiveness, away from those types of things, into the things that you personally find fulfilling and you personally find meaning in, and you are motivated then to go work on those and leave a legacy that leaves the world a little bit better than you found it, right? So that's one of the main focuses, I think, of why this meaningful revolution's important. Because going back to that ratio, if for every 1 hour of meaningful work that you're doing 4 hours of work that is busy work that doesn't matter, work that you don't feel like you have control over your life, then that's a recipe to burn out over the long term. That's a recipe to really not feel connected to your life, not feel motivated. Maybe, misery and despair could fall into that, especially if the more that ratio gets out of whack. If you had 1 hour every day where you worked on things that you love, like, that's better than nothing. But there's a better quality of life for you, and you'll feel better. You'll treat the people around you better. You'll contribute to the world a little bit better, I think, if you really focus in on that. So the second thing that I think it's really important to have a meaningful revolution is that I feel fulfillment is a necessary component for happiness, right? And there's so many different ways we can find fulfillment. We can find it through our own self-discovery, right? Sometimes just figuring out how you work better helps you feel more connected to the world around you. It helps you feel like you're living your truth, right? Which is why the second part is a lot of people find fulfillment in their work. And I think the biggest thing that with work is if you're growing, if you're learning, if you're figuring stuff out about yourself and how you do the thing that you do and make it better, that act of learning, that act of growth is really fulfilling in itself. So having work that's challenging, having work that you're super interested in, that when things go sideways, you will say, you know what, I really need to figure this out, or, okay, this is just a bump in the road. It helps you with resilience. So that meaning and work is super important. And then third, most people find meaning and fulfillment in relationships. So having kids, having a close group of friends that you can joke around with, board game groups, or whatever, fellow musicians, whatever it is for you. But people in the community, people in your religious organizations, people in other organizations or book clubs and stuff. So like the list goes on and on, but there's a relational component to meaning. And like when you start your meaningful revolution, you need to find that self-discovery. You need to find that those tasks, those things, those hobbies that help you feel fulfilled. And you have to find the relationships that add on to it. And when you get those three things figured out, that's when the magic happens. That's when, you feel the most fulfilled and you're doing good. You have a sense of service out in the world, I think. So that's why this podcast, I think, is super important, and why we interview people about the things that they absolutely love or the things that they're experts about and could talk about all the time, because you can pull a little bit of that emotional energy of just how excited people are about particular topics or particular things. And you also see how that passion connects them to the people around them. So I've had, I've interviewed folks that have started wellness organizations in their companies, right? The places where they worked. You went from a lawyer to wellness captain or leader in the organization, and they mobilized the people in that organization by just talking about wellness all the time. And I absolutely love that. Or talked with a lady, Kristen. So that was Carrie that from the first time, if you want to go check out that episode. But, Kristen talked about a lot of this inclusion work, and it's just about being curious about people, not making assumptions, and trying to understand that there's a common humanity. And it's really impactful. It was really engaging listening and talking with her because she's so passionate about that work. But, I think you're also like pulling lessons out of it. So, that's all about that. So this is definitely live, and I lost my train of thought, so that's part of the magic. Let's see. Okay, looking at my notes here, the next thing to talk. So, that's why okay, recap. Meaningful revolution is important because there's energy out in the world that we need to change, and you do that by finding fulfilling things. And number two, fulfillment is necessary for happiness, and it's contagious. So when you find the folks that are fulfilled, that are operating at the highest levels, you generally want to follow too. Okay, now we can switch over to the 5 mindsets all high performers have, and all people that have started or are on their meaningful revolutions also have, right? And, again, it's kind of like the groundwork for really focusing on the things that mean stuff to you, that you find engaging, exciting, that you get into those flow states for. But if you don't have the right mindsets, that's not going to happen. You're going to wander, you're going to be distracted, you're going to be thrown off course super easy. So that's why these 5 mindsets are super important. So first mindset that I think all people that want to have a meaningful revolution need is that fulfilling work is necessary to live your best life. And again, I'm talking about it earlier in this episode, but if you don't have that edge, that finding work that you love, that's forwarding or pushing forward your agenda, your goals, your ambitions, your big dreams, your big ideas about the world and how it could be for yourself and for your family and for your impact. If that's not necessary, it's going to be really hard to get into any type of action. So that's something I've borrowed from my high performance work. This idea of necessity is something I'm always looking for with coaching clients. And your level of necessity in your life will determine how motivated you are and generally how much success you have gotten in your career, probably, or like as any of the roles that you might have in your life as a father, mother, spouse, friend, mentor, those types of things. When you see it as necessary to living your best life or necessary for you to do, you approach it with a different level of awareness, of intention, of excellence, of service than you would if you're just kind of willy-nilly going about it, or you're like, it doesn't really matter. So that's one of the core beliefs and ideas of having a like meaningful revolution mindset, right? I'll call it that. So second thing is that if you're on your meaningful revolution, you have to believe that you have agency and control over the results that you get in life, right? And that's simply just that the effort that you put out there, the sweat, the tears, the blood that you put on the line to advance your ambitions, to live a good life, will lead to a good life, right? Again, if you don't feel like you have control, that because the economy is sideways, the world is upside down, the dog looked at you funny this morning and it put you in a bad mood, like, if you can't control your emotions, you can't control the things that you do or how you focus and where you focus your mind, then it's going to be really hard to get any traction anywhere. So, the belief, the indomitable belief that you can create your reality, is famously, said by Steve Jobs that, you're either, and I'll paraphrase here, you are either working and living in the life that you've designed for yourself or that someone else has designed for you. And it's such an important idea, I think, that, we need to be designing our lives. We need to be actively trying to build that life that we want. And it's possible. Like, you can change things if you put effort in. But sometimes you get knocked down so much and you forget that, or you never really think about, what can I do in this moment to make things change? So super, super important. Super, super enlightening when I have clients that are kind of giving their power away to folks, and you're like, what happened if you took more responsibility here for what you did? You can't control what other people do, but you can control how you show up, and I think that's super powerful. Okay, enough about that. Third idea, third mindset is to favor action over delay, right? And this is super important because over the last 3 years, we've had the pandemic, we've had inflation, we've had a lot of political upheaval, and people, when things get really uncertain and with the lockdowns and stuff, people's worlds got small. And people started to think, well, I'll get back in the game, I'll start looking for a job when the economy takes care of itself, or when the pandemic's over, or when we get back to normal. And all these things really are just delaying any type of action, right? And if you're on a meaningful revolution, you're motivated to take action today. Like, you want to get in the game because that helps you change the area around you, and it's necessary for you to be happy. So, don't wait to start looking for other jobs if you're not happy in your current job tomorrow. Like, right after this video, right after you watch this, go and update your resume. If you're thinking about starting a business and you don't know where you need to start, like, hire a coach today, go talk to somebody that has a business and get some mentorship. There's so many different things, but get in motion, get in action, because again, that it's necessary and it'll help you get the output that you want. Fourth mindset for your meaningful revolution is to strive for mastery in everything you do. And what is that? That is consistently trying to improve all the skills, especially skills that are important for you to build that big dream, that big ambition you have for yourself. Again, your family, organization, or your legacy. So, for me, like, talking in front of a camera is something I've been working on for years and years and years. This is not my natural state of things. It freaks me out a little bit. I'm super introverted, so I'll probably have to take a nap after this because a lot of energy going out. Kidding. But it's super important to figure out the key skills that you need in your life to succeed. In my past life, I was a software engineer, so learning the new software design protocols, new systems, new software that's coming out, new computer languages. Like that was all part of being a master software engineer. But and again, in this life, it's talking to videos, it's thinking about marketing copy, it's sales, it's creating engaging content for y'all. So, knowing those skills and knowing that I have to master them, one, because it's necessary, two, because it'll help me create a successful coaching business, three, because, learning is active, so you have to take action. You have to be doing the videos, you have to be doing the copy, you have to be doing the coaching calls to achieve that level of mastery. And ultimately, when you're in a mastery mindset, you're learning, you're trying to grow, and that's fun, right? That's what I believe. And the fifth mindset to kind of shift into that is a learning mindset, right? To know that and reflect every day of what worked, what didn't work, and expecting to make mistakes and recover from them quickly, right? I think this is a key distinction in this learning mindset. I haven't heard a lot of other folks harp on too much, but it was something that came from my early career when I was a software engineer at Walmart. My first manager, Max, said that, hey, I screwed up on a project pretty bad and I was beating myself up, and he's like, you know what? Mistakes are good. Mistakes mean you're learning, you're pushing the envelope, you're pushing your skill set, and that's great. And you can learn from them and move on, and you'll be stronger, and that's great. But if you're making the same mistake again in 2 weeks and 2 months and in 2 years, that is something that we need to address. But if this mistake doesn't happen again, it means you learned your lesson, it means you're a stronger programmer from it, and it's super, super impactful in my career in software and in coaching, right? I know this podcast has had a couple of technical issues happen from it. I'm learning to be a better sound engineer. That's something I needed to figure out because I'm doing everything myself. And maybe it sounds that way, maybe it doesn't, but it's part of the learning experience. It's part of being in the game and advancing and doing it. It's fun because it's something I care about. I really care about this podcast. I really care about, my weekly newsletter. And I'm always trying to think of ways on how to improve it again or figuring out the things that don't work. So we'll see if these little, solo episodes in the middle of a bunch of interviews work or not work. But that'll be fun. And we'll probably talk about it in another month on a state of the podcast. So okay, so those are 5 mindsets that are required for your meaningful revolution. It's, finding that or knowing that it's necessary to find fulfilling work. It's knowing that you have agency to control your environment and your outcomes. It's favoring action. It's striving for mastery, and it's adopting this learning mindset, expecting you're going to make mistakes and expecting that you will recover quickly from them as you learn. So these, like I said, I think if you were to do one thing with these right now, other than just listen to what they are, it'd be to grab your journal, right? Grab your journal and, rate yourself on, do you work on things that are necessary for your future growth and happiness? Are you doing things that actually impact and drive results in your life? And do these on a scale of 1 to 10. Do you favor action every day, or are you avoiding and delaying? That's a really good question for you. Are you striving for mastery in the top 3 skills that you need for your career or for your life, right? So maybe you need to be a better programmer, you need to be a better project manager, and you need to be a better dad. Throw something personal in there. It's also an important thing. Again, going back to what people find fulfilling. And then, what are you actively trying to learn in the next 90 days? What's one skill that you want to really focus on to get excellent at in the next 90 days, right? And you don't have to get excellent, you just have to improve. And I think journaling on that and rating yourself on that and saying like, how could I improve this score? You know, what are 3 words on why I rated myself this way is a really good way to do that. I think you'll find that it's inevitable to be like, okay, how do I make this happen, right? Just a little bit of momentum can yield a lot of results. So anyways, that said, guys, thank you for joining me live here for the Meaningful Revolution podcast and my newsletter if you're live with me right now. You can stay tuned for next week's episode where we'll be talking with Natalie Forsbauer on she does a magazine called Heart and Soil, which is really amazing, and she's into this sustainable agriculture movement. So we'll talk with her, learn a lot. She'll share a lot about her passion on this topic. I know you'll love it. Also, if you are listening and you're like, I've been really struggling with my mindsets, and maybe you do need to work with somebody, right? I want to let you know that I have a free 1-hour strategy session that you can apply for while I have spots open. They tend to go pretty quick, so make sure you go to SeanButler.com/coaching or below where you're watching this video to make sure that you save your spot, right? Because like I said, these go pretty quick. People love these strategy calls. We deep dive into your life from the application. It gives me some information on areas maybe to focus on, and we talk about your life through the high performance lens. And that conversation itself is really impactful. You walk away with high performance habits to help you figure out and get in the game and start your meaningful revolution. If you want to deep dive further after that, we talk about different coaching options, but ultimately the goal is to get you a strategy plan that you can implement right away to get results. And so that hour is free. Again, if you apply at SeanButler.com/coaching, takes about 10 minutes to fill out the application, and then we go from there. So hopefully you take me up on that, guys. If not, no worries. We'll see you next week on the Meaningful Revolution podcast. This is Sean Butner signing out. Before we wrap up this episode of the Meaningful Revolution podcast, I want to extend an invitation for you to start your meaningful revolution through a high-performance conversation. So if you go to SeanButler.com/coaching, you can qualify for a 1-hour strategy session with me as long as I have time, and we will deep dive and have a conversation like the one you just heard. So if you like this podcast and what you just listened to, then I know you're going to love our one-on-one strategy session, because we'll go in and we'll deep dive into your life through the high performance lens, this science-based process that people love, and we'll find some breakthroughs for you on how you can live a little bit more meaningful, or feeling a little bit more fulfilled, or feeling a little bit more connected to those around you. So, but don't take my word for it. Here's more of Dara sharing their story of how they were before and after certified high performance coaching. And again, if you're interested in qualifying for a free 1-hour strategy session, go to SeanButler.com/coaching, link below wherever you're watching or listening to this episode. So over to Dara.
Before coaching, I was just sort of like a machine, just going along and doing the thing. And like, there were decisions that I must have made at different points along the way that seemed like small decisions, but they slowly added up to this life that didn't make sense to me anymore. And it just came crashing down, and I took a day off of work and was like, I can't do this. Like, this doesn't make sense to me, what I do in my daily life, how I'm living my life, how I'm not taking care of my body, and socially, like, just the whole picture was just kind of it just all felt wrong. And then I signed up to do the coaching, and I think it gave me this space to pause and reflect in a way that daily life doesn't always give us the structure to do that. And because you're paying money, you're making this investment, right? And so you're committing to it in a way that if I say, oh, I'm going to journal every day about my hopes and dreams, it's not the same as sitting down with someone, having somebody hold you accountable and showing up and doing the work. So before, yeah, just sort of this machine moving along this path that was sort of unconsciously set. And then after, I've just shifted simple things like how I feed myself. And like just little things that I'm suddenly aware of, and who I bring into my life, and how I spend my time and energy. And it just feels so much more in alignment with my values and my goals and my community and family's values and goals. So huge change.